I'm going to walk through just some of the great learnings from the show first, and then I'll whip through our culture and talk to you about those words that support it. First of all, I was shocked, really blown away by the tremendous national response we got. 18 million viewers saw that program that week, and the only program that did better was American Idol that week. And I have notebooks filled with letters and cards from people saying, boy, I wish our company cared about its people like Herschend Entertainment does. And they just noticed something different about our employees and how much they cared about the company, because there were 3 or 4 others in the program as well. And it really told me the degree that there's a lot of people dissatisfied with their jobs. 99% of the letters that we got were people saying, I wish our owners cared. I wish our bosses cared. I wish I could work with people as dedicated as I saw on that show. And you all know that too. There are a lot of dissatisfied people out there. And I think one of our roles as Christian leaders is to prepare and create an environment that is fun to work in and that we share what we have as a company. I know many of you believe that as well. The second thing I've really already mentioned is that we did broad programs, not one-offs, so I really already hit that point. And the last one is this show took our foundation, Share It Forward, to a whole new level. And I'm going to save the specifics about the foundation until a little bit later. But just this one factoid for you to understand the ramifications of this program. When we ran the show, or CBS ran the show, we helped about 60 people a year in this program. And this was 2009. This year, 2011, we're going to help 800 families on Share It Forward. And by the end of this year, almost 10% of our employees will be helped, have been helped in some way by this foundation. So I think it's a great idea for any of you guys. Thank you. But it's a fantastic idea, and I will go through it a little bit. So if any of you want to copy the idea, we'd love to help you do it, because it's a great way to go forward. So when I got to Herschend, there was no definition of the culture. And I take zero credit for the culture that Herschend has. It was Jack and Pete. And please hear me say that. My only role was to come in and try to create a vernacular that we could train people in how to carry that culture forward. Well, I won't bore you with the whole story, but what we ended up with was using love out of the Bible to define our culture. And I'm going to show you how. This quote exemplifies a very important point, because when I say love, even though many of you are Christians, or I think most of you are, but even if you're not and you're here just to check it out, that's great. When you hear love, you're probably having a negative reaction to that, because you are an American, most of you, or you speak English, all of you, and you think of the American term for love. And unfortunately, English only has one word for love. Many of you who know the Greeks, would be better if we were all Greek talking about this topic, because the Greeks have 4 words for love that they use in describing the different emotions we all go through. There's eros, which is the love most of you think of. It's the attraction you feel for somebody. There's philos, which is brotherly love. I know there's a couple here from Philadelphia I met. A lot of you think of Philadelphia when you hear philos, even though brotherly loves and the Philadelphia Eagles does not go hand in hand for me. I mean, these are the people who throw snowballs at Santa Claus at halftime, so I'm not sure about brotherly love. But then there's storge, which is the love that a family shares. And, family love, blood is definitely thicker than water and crosses lines, and you accept things from your family that you wouldn't accept from other people. But the last kind of love is agape love. And it is really a verb, and it is a behavior. Agapeho is the verb, and that's the kind of love we teach at Herschend. It has nothing to do with how you feel about somebody. It's completely how you behave to somebody. And I know that's a simple concept, but it is hard to do. It is not how you feel, it's how you behave. So we teach, as the screen there says, love is a verb. And there's a quote here by a famous football coach that I'll read to you. I don't necessarily have to like my players, but as a leader, I must love them. Love is loyalty, love is teamwork, love respects the dignity of the individual, and that is the strength of any organization. Anybody know who wrote that? Tony Dungy, I heard. Yeah, Vince Lombardi. Good, good. He's a little older for some of you young folks. He was a Hall of Fame coach of the Green Bay Packers, has passed away, but he was known as a really, really tough coach. Very tough, swore a lot, but he loved his players, and he loved them as a verb. And that's what this is all about. So if you ask the question, the next question is love really appropriate for business? Why use it for business? But if there's one question I want you to dwell on after you leave today, it's really that second question. The first answer is, it is the first commandment out of the Bible. When Jesus is asked, what's the number one commandment? What does he say? Love God. Yeah, love God and love others. So as a Christian, it's very easy to say, hey, this is why we should love our fellow employees. But the second question there is really one I want you to ponder a little bit. Why in the business world do we exclude the discussion about how we treat each other? Or at least it's not talked about very often in the business world. We'll talk about mission, we'll talk about vision, we'll talk about our profit goals and our customer scores, but do we really focus on how you're going to treat me and I'm going to treat you in difficult situations? And that's what we focus on. Is we talk about it at home as parents, how we're going to treat each other, how we treat each other with our best friends, the people you have strong personal relationships. But for some reason, at least I have found in 35 years of being in all different businesses, and that's a story for another time, but I've been with Saturn and Saab and General Motors, small businesses, large businesses, and I'm shocked, including Christian nonprofits and Christian companies I've worked for in the book publishing business. I'm shocked by the dearth of conversation about how we're supposed to treat each other. And I've seen some of the worst cultures in Christian companies, quote unquote, that I've been part of. And I think we need to eliminate that dichotomy between your personal life values and the way you treat each other at work. And that's what we're trying to do at Herschend. And another reason to use love is really business, as you know, is all about people. People are all about relationships, and relationships are obviously all about love. So I want you to think about that as we're talking and as you're going through other talks this week and contemplating on what you're learning here. Why should we have ever two sets of values in how we treat or behave to each other? So what we did, and I'm not going to read, for sake of time, I'm not going to read 1 Corinthians 13, but if you read Paul's verse, which is often read at weddings, and it's not really a business principle usually, but these are the words that we took out of 1 Corinthians. Love is patient, love is kind, etc. We took selflessness, respectfulness, honesty, humility, forgiveness, and commitment. I left a card on your tables. I'm not going to go through all the words because it would take too long. And if you want the definition of each, it's on your table. But I do want to tell a few stories and just give you a feel for the type of culture that we're trying to create as we go through it. So I'm just going to walk through a few, tell you a few stories, and then go from there. But the first one, the first of the 8 words, is patience. And I know a lot of you are impatient business people, and we all got to hit a bottom line. I report to a board of 7 independent directors. Only 2 of them are Herschend family members. Like I said, I'm the 3rd non-family CEO. They've already proven they will take somebody out if they don't get the results. I have to hit the numbers. So this is not about being patient with poor performance, but it does mean behaving with self-control when you're dealing with somebody who's having a rough day or having some poor performance. And the key principle, no matter what we do as leaders in our company, is to always maintain the dignity of other people. Meaning, the real practical application is to praise in public and admonish in private. And I know you may be thinking, well, what does patience have to do with praising in public? Really, if you're good at praising, and you guys have all seen great leaders who they're very specific in their praise, and you take specifically what somebody has done and you write them a note or you give them a congratulatory statement, but don't overgeneralize. But the harder part is not admonishing in public. And I know for me, I had one experience when I was with Saab, and I was running Saab North America, and it was a huge turnaround situation, and we had a really good 3-year run, and we actually had huge sales increases. Things were going really well. We were profitable again, but we had a really bad quarter where we missed a number pretty badly, and there were reasons for it, production issues and so forth. But I was sleeping in on Sunday morning. We were going to get up and go to church, and my phone rang by my bed. And now it's about 8:30 in the morning on Sunday morning. And I was running North America. Well, it was my boss from Sweden. Of course, it's 2:30 in the afternoon there or so. And he just starts chewing me out on Sunday morning, really upset about the sales number. And he orders me to fly over to Sweden that afternoon. For you, those of you who have made that trip, you get on the plane, you fly red-eye all night, you get into Sweden, you have a meeting at 8 a.m. in Sweden, which is 2 a.m. Eastern time. You're all jet-lagged, you know, this horrible Swedish coffee, and a lot of caffeine, though, which was good. And I literally just went there for 6-hour flight to get chewed out for 10 hours. Very embarrassing, very humiliating situation. Got on the plane and flew back home. And I was a very senior executive, and even at that level, that was the beginning of the end for me. I emotionally disconnected from Saab at that point because it was so embarrassing, it was so humiliating, and I bet you a lot of you have gone through similar situations growing up in your life, whether it was your parents who did it to you or a friend or a bully, but you know how that feels. And I vowed at that point to never, ever make somebody feel like that again. And it's a simple rule, but it's a powerful rule to always admonish in private and always protect a person's dignity when you're trying to make them better. So that's one of the principles that we teach and we hold each other accountable to. The second one is also misunderstood a lot, and it's kindness. And again, this is not about being nice all the time. Most quote-unquote Christian companies, I think, tend to be too nice. They don't hold people accountable often enough, and that's not what this is talking about. What the definition is showing appreciation for contribution. Now, any of you who know, and Marky knows Jack Herschend well, and a few of you know Jack Herschend, there's no better example of an encourager than Jack Herschend. And he made me realize, why do human beings have such a hard time encouraging one another? I mean, how many of you, and I seriously want to see a show of hands, how many of you feel like you have had too much encouragement in your life? Let me see. I'm serious. I mean, nobody ever raises their hands. And life just beats us up every day. There is plenty to feel bad about every day in what we do. So why, as leaders, do we have a hard time encouraging other people? Do we think they're going to start to slough off? Do we think they aren't really doing that good of a job? I don't know. But Jack taught me this phrase, that the CEO is a chief encouragement officer. And I know that might sound corny to some of you, but if you knew Jack, you wouldn't see it as corny because he gets the best out of people. I've never seen people in my life work as hard as the people at Herschend Entertainment work. It's because they love Jack like a father, and I know I love him like a father, and I work my rear end off because I don't want to disappoint him. But he also knows how to hold you accountable, and he'll also tell you when you're doing something wrong. But he always keeps it in a good balance. And he gives me a praise probably 3 or 4 times for every admonishment that I get from him. So think about that as a leader in your own company. Are you an encourager? Do you really bring out the best in people, or are you one that always puts the screws down on people? And I guarantee you that doesn't bring out the best. But Jack taught me a lot in that area. A third one I want to talk a little bit about is honesty. And honest, it's a non-starter. If you're dishonest, if you cheat or you steal, you're going to be fired in any company, including ours. There's no second strikes. If you have a safety violation, you're fired immediately in our company. It's a pretty tough culture. That's not what honesty means here. You lying and stealing or cheating, that's off. That's just no second chances. What we mean is to tell people the truth about their performance. And this is another thing. A lot of you are probably on nonprofit boards or maybe Christian ministries. And it's related to what I said earlier. I see this weakness in more companies that are trying to be quote-unquote Christian than any other thing. Is a lack of honesty with each other of how are you really performing. And we have a very robust review process. I won't bore you with the details, but even with senior executives, I've had very tough conversations, and I use a sheet of paper that has 3 headings on it. Less of, more of, same as. And you might use a similar kind of thing. But what are you doing that I want to see the same as, less of, or more of? And it gets really specific about where they're having challenge. And if they can't get on board with these values, they're asked to leave the company. And I'm going to show you an example of that in a few minutes. But it's so hard. It is so hard to be really honest with somebody and tell them exactly what their weaknesses are. But you think about the best leader you've ever had. I bet you it's somebody who told you where you were weak and where you had to get better. And look at the example we have in the Bible of how Jesus very openly confronted people, including his own disciples. And he was very direct and very honest with people. And he told them exactly where they stood with him. And I think that's a great, great example. So that's a little bit about honesty. Now, selflessness, this is where I want to talk a little bit about our foundation for those of you who may have an interest in it. But before I do that, I want to tell you about Monica. And that's the young lady in this picture. And there's a principle that I have, and I'm sure any of you in any company of any size, you struggle with, how do I help everybody? I just don't have the time. There's so many needs. There's so much pain out there. How do I have the time? But at the same time, if you don't help anybody, your heart gets cold and you turn off to the needs of people. And I heard Andy Stanley, who's pastor of North Point Church in Atlanta and a good friend of mine, he gave a talk one time and he shared a principle that helped me so much. He said, you can't worry about the fact that you can't help everybody and turn your heart cold. But his principle is do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. And don't use an excuse to turn your heart cold to people. And Monica's one of the young ladies that I really followed her situation to make sure she got the help she needed. Her sister, Monica's 22, her sister was 23 and died of a drug overdose and left a young baby of 2 years old. And Monica, who had her own struggles, she struggles mightily with, and she doesn't mind me sharing the story, she struggles mightily with depression. She has her own issues. She adopted that baby. And she was making about $17,000 a year for us as a landscaping person. It's part-time. We brought her in full-time. We happened to have an opening, so we didn't create a position. We hired her full-time, and then she applied to Share It Forward, the foundation, and she got the child stipend to help her child along. But the selflessness that she showed to take that baby when she had her own issues going forward just was a tremendous example of being selfless to me. And I think we as a company tried to give back to her through the foundation. And the way it works is basically it starts with the employees. The employees donate into the foundation, and then the company matches dollar for dollar. So typically for us, we get about $300,000 in donations from our employees. We match another $300,000. So we'll put about $600,000 a year. And then the Herschends will match another amount depending on where they're at. So we'll have hundreds of thousands of dollars in this pool. And employees apply based on their needs. And it's a great way to pinpoint dollars where the people really need help. Now, it's a foundation, so independent board. I'm not on the board. I can't make any of those decisions. I don't even know the results of what happens, and that way it can be a non-taxable event to the employee. But obviously, we can't give $5 an hour raises to everybody to get everyone's income up, because then we're uncompetitive and we would lose our business. But it's a very targeted way to do it, and so I encourage you to think along those lines in your own businesses to help all the employees who are struggling in this economy right now. Now, you saw Richard, the guy that I sprayed with the water and got him all wet. Richard is another beautiful person. Those two girls sitting in the front of that picture, or standing in the front, those were the two girls we adopted. Richard was also a temporary worker for us, making under $20,000 a year. He had 3 boys already, and he still adopted 2 girls who were being abused in their home. And that is selflessness. I don't know if you caught in the film, on the Undercover Boss clip, his home was destroyed in a flood, and he lived for 6 months in a pop-up tent with his 5 kids. 6 months in a pop-up tent. And he didn't tell anybody at work. He could have applied to Sheriff Ford. He didn't tell anybody. I mean, these are the kind of people we work. And I asked him after I revealed who I was, and we gave him that $10,000 award. I said, "Why didn't you apply?" And he said, "I just figure other people are worse off than me. I don't want to take the money." So many people are like that. They're unwilling to get help or unwilling to ask. So it's just a great example of selflessness, and we're trying to pay back to those people through Share It Forward. And that's when I went there with the $10,000. We just repaired his windows. You know, they were just pouring in coal there. It was unbelievable. Then because the foundation shot up in dollars and everybody was giving more, we doubled the catastrophic aid to $20,000 limit, and we actually went out and built an extra room on his house, because his entire room could fit on this stage. I mean, his entire house is very, very small. And they didn't have their own bedroom. The parents lived in the kitchen. So we built them a little bedroom there, and that's the bedroom that we built them. So just a couple examples of what we did, trying to be a selfless company back to our employees. We tithe, as I know Bobby and a lot of companies here do. We tithe 10% of our profits go to matching Share It Forward, and if we have money left over, then we give to the community. So that's kind of how we do the giving part. So that's selflessness. Now,